Probably not. Jesse. John.
Okay, good evening, everyone. I just unmuted everyone. Please stay. I just muted everyone. Please stay muted until it's your turn to speak, and then unmute yourself. That decreases any feedback we get. Mr. Court Reporter, if we could go on the record, please.
We are on the record now, Your Honor. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Today is Thursday, November 4th, and it's approximately 6:30 p.m. Welcome to the Public Service Commission's public hearing in case number 9499, which is captioned in the matter of the application of Morgnec Road Solar LLC for a certificate of public convenience and necessity to construct a 45 megawatt solar photovoltaic generating facility in Kent County, Maryland. The applicant seeks to construct the project on two parcels totaling approximately 253 acres in Kent County near the town of Chestertown, tax map 37, parcels 40 and 174, with accompanying interconnection facilities necessary to interconnect the project to the Chestertown substation. The purpose of tonight's hearing is to take comments from the public on the project. Please understand that I cannot answer questions because this is a case under my consideration. All of the documents filed in this case are available on the Public Service Commission's website, which is psc.state.md.us, and can be accessed by using the case search feature and typing in the case number 9499. The evidentiary hearing in this case will be held next week, and it will also be virtual and live streamed to this YouTube channel. A number of people requested to participate in this evening's hearing and will be given an opportunity to provide their comments after presentations by the parties in this case. In addition, written comments on this matter may be submitted electronically or by first-class mail through November 10, 2021. Comments submitted electronically must be submitted through the Commission's public comment drop box, which can be accessed through the Commission's website. Instructions for logging into the public comment drop box are located under the Tools section on the website under the Make a Public Comment tab. Commenters utilizing the public comment drop box are required to complete a one-time registration. All comments must include a reference to case number 9499. If submitted by first-class mail, comments must be addressed to Andrew S. Johnston, Executive Secretary, Maryland Public Service Commission, William Donald Schaefer Tower, 6 St. Paul Street, Baltimore, Maryland, 21202. I will post that address at the conclusion of the hearing. We will first hear from the applicant, Morgnec Road Solar LLC. Counsel?
Good evening, Your Honor, and thank you to everyone for joining tonight. My name is David Beagleman, so I'm an attorney for the applicant in this case. I also have with me Mr. Dane Bauer, one of the environmental consultants for the project, as well as Kevin Clark from Urban Grid, the developer of the project. Mr. Bauer will provide a brief overview of the project tonight, so I'll pass the virtual microphone to him. Mr. Bauer?
Thanks, David, and Your Honor. So H&B Solutions, I am one of the owners in that firm. My partner and I, Melissa Hall. The office or the business resides at 37534 Oliver Drive. That's in Selbyville, Maryland, Delaware, Selbyville, Delaware, 19975. So we have been working on this project probably for about 5 years. And we did the environmental review document that was submitted with the CPCN application. The project is in the Chester River watershed. The creek that directly borders the project is Morgan Creek. Probably first and foremost is this watershed is not a Tier 2 anti-degradation high quality water, so it's not protected under that portion of the Maryland Department of the Environment laws. On the east side of the project, which is parcel 3740, the project does abut the critical area commission line, and there has been care taken in order to make sure that the site plan at this time and before it's approved will be the safe distance and buffered from that. The project can be successfully located on the other portions of the project and buffer the critical area commission without impacting it at all. The site was evaluated for wetlands by a company called ERI. They went out and they found that the large portion of the wetlands were in the wooded areas. By the way, the wooded areas and all of the forest are not to be cut. And the project will provide the necessary afforestation mitigation, which at this point, based on the site plan as it is, would be about approximately 107 acres. The wetlands that are in the fields were mostly associated with a few of the drainage ditches for the property, and there aren't many. And the appropriate buffers, actually, the applicant has proposed and MDE has agreed that we will use a buffer of 35 feet, which is 10 feet more than what the federal Corps and MDE requirements are, which is 25 feet. The project site plan was approximately 216 acres, but it's important to note that at this point, the project hasn't gone through the local process, so it's still evolving. The applicant, along with the Power Plant Research Program, has entered into a settlement agreement. In that settlement agreement, there are a number of conditions which have to be satisfied, many of them which are directly conforming to the local requirements and the local ordinance. Several of them of interest, I will point out. The vegetative buffer that screens the project will have to be 60 feet from any right-of-way, and that includes the right-of-way for the proposed bypass area that will be designated on the final site plan. And there will be also room on the parcel for a traffic circle, which has also been proposed in the same settlement agreement. In addition to that, all of the buffers on the project from the property lines in Morgnec will be 200 feet. That's also part of the settlement agreement. The only exception to that would be if there are areas and boundaries on the property which border forested areas which are in a protected area that will be preserved in perpetuity. In that event, the buffers would only have to be 100 feet. There are a number of other requirements in the settlement agreement which would have to be satisfied. But in addition to that, there was a new requirement added in state law this past year, which is to be able to demonstrate that the project is in conformance with climate control considerations. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Control has identified sea level rise estimates, which they feel in this century may reach anywhere from 1 to 3 feet. There are two models that our company used in order to predict what the sea level rise might be for this project. One of them is NOAA, the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration model. It's set up to run it under two conditions. One is if it's 4 feet, and the other if it's 10 feet. So H&B Solutions ran the model for those two different scenarios and found out even if it was 10 feet, this project is not impacted by sea level rise. We wanted to confirm that, so we used the Merlin model, which is a state of Maryland. It's a Maryland environmental regulation and information system. And their model uses a 2 to 5 feet scenario, and then they also use a 10-foot scenario. We ran both of those, selected the 10-foot model, and sea level rise confirmed the findings from the NOAA model that there is no sea level rise impact. In addition to that, the new regulation also required that we do an assessment of greenhouse gases. So as you may know, that all fossil fuel burning generation facilities generate CO2 and other gases which have a greenhouse effect. Solar does not. So EPA has developed a model that's called AVERT. It's basically the fact that it runs a model to demonstrate the avoidance that the project will result in from further emissions or generation of fossil fuels. So we ran that model, and it actually gives you a reduction number. In Maryland's case, there's two components of the reduction. We don't produce CO2 greenhouse gases in Maryland with the generation of electricity. So there's a net benefit to Maryland compared to the generation on fossil fuels. And it was about 3,000 metric tons a year. We also import greenhouse gases. So there's a benefit to that allocation as well. And I think there was another 1,500 metric tons. So there was about 4,000 or 4,300 metric ton savings by doing a solar project as compared to a fossil fuel project. Another thing is we had lots of slopes on this project. Anything that was 15% or over was eliminated. The vast majority of the site is between 5 and 10%. And for stormwater management, they'll use level spreaders. Level spreaders are very shallow trenches that are on the contours. Excuse me, they're filled with stone. And the effect is that they slow the velocity down the hill, and you result in sheet flow and eventually get non-rooftop disconnect credits. Anything over 10% slope will have to have standard environmentally sensitive design stormwater structures such as infiltration trenches or bioretention facilities. Normal sediment and erosion and stormwater and ingress and egress and fencing and all those level of approvals will get handled as part of the site plan approval at the local level. There is a state fire marshal requirement that you can access the project. So there's a drive aisle that goes completely around the project and starts from the entrance and does a loop around the entire project. We also had to contact DNR regarding rare, threatened, and endangered species. We have a record on file that shows that DNR determined that this project would not affect any rare, threatened, or endangered species. We also had to go to Maryland Historic Trust. They do an archaeological and historic building assessment. We gave them the information that we found online. As a result of that, they determined that the project has some proximity to a site where some archaeological finds were recorded in the past. So we had to do a phase 1 assessment, which is a field assessment where you look for archaeological finds. They turned out to be insignificant. Maryland Historic Trust did not require that we do a phase 2 or do any other studies. We did determination of eligibility forms, which are assessments of the older houses that were identified as part of that process. Once we submitted those determination of eligibility forms, MHT also determined that nothing further was needed in that regard. I think that's a general summary of the project as it stands, but I'll point out again that as it moves forward, we would be required to meet all of the state, federal, and local requirements that are associated with a site plan, in addition to getting approval from the Critical Area Commission that we avoided any impact in that area, and that we need to demonstrate that we comply with the settlement agreement that was reached between the power plant research program and the applicant. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Mr. Bigelmans, does that conclude the applicant's presentation?
It does, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. Next then, if we could hear from the Power Plant Research Program.
Good evening, Your Honor. Sandra McLemore on behalf of the Power Plant Research Program. And today I have with me Mr. Robert Sadinsky, who will tell a little bit about what we do.
Good evening, Your Honor. Bob Sinsky, Maryland Department of Natural Resources Power Plant Research Program. What PPRP does is an independent environmental and socioeconomic analysis of the project. We then submit that recommendation to the Public Service Commission, who then makes the final decision on the project. Our assessment includes a project assessment, review report, testimony, and recommended conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And perhaps can you confirm, Ms. McLemore, that the recommendations in this case are in the docket and available for people to view?
Yes, Your Honor. We have filed direct, reply, supplemental, and reply supplemental in the docket. And the conditions and the revised conditions are also included in there, along with the secretarial letter and the project assessment report.
Okay, thank you. The Maryland Office of People's Counsel, Mr. Hoover.
Good evening. My name's Frederick Hoover. I'm with the Office of People's Counsel. The Office of People's Counsel represents the residential customers of the utility companies supervised by the Public Service Commission. We have reviewed the application, the testimony filed by the applicant, the testimony and conditions filed by the Power Plant Research Program, and the testimony from staff, and we'll be filing some statement on the matter at the appropriate time.
Thank you. And staff. Is there someone here from the Commission's technical staff? Mr. Albert, can you unmute yourself? You can't.
I got knocked out.
Okay, you're here now. Great.
Thank you. I'm here for commission staff. I'm getting feedback here. I'm not sure if you'll hear that as well. We will look at all the issues that pertain to whether this project is in the public interest. We did file testimony. We will be participating in the evidentiary hearing next week, and we will be filing pleadings. Again, we take a look at all of the issues that pertain to whether the commission should authorize the project.
Thank you. Okay, when I say your name, please unmute yourself and state your name and also spell it for the court reporter so he gets it correct, please. So I'm going to go in the order in which emails were received. The first name I have is Frank B. Rhodes. Is Frank B. Rhodes available?
Your Honor, I would like to speak for Frank Rhodes. He never received an email from you to confirm. He called me this evening to confirm the web site and how to get on.
Is Mr. Rhodes on the call or not on the call?
I do not see him. I'm not sure he was able to do it because he didn't have the information.
Okay. Well, if you received the link, you could forward it to him if you have his email address. Everyone received the link in the same manner, so I don't know why he wouldn't have received it. Please, if you talk to him again, assure him he can file written comments. Okay, the next name I have is Judy Gifford. Is Judy Gifford available? No? Okay. Doug D. West. Is Doug D. West here? The next name I have is Janet Christensen Lewis, who I see on the call.
Yeah, I'm here. Good evening. Thank you very much for allowing me to make a comment this evening.
Okay, can you please state and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Sorry, Janet Christensen Lewis, JanetChristensen-Lewis. Okay?
Yes.
Okay. I would like to say Delmarva Power and Light and Chop Tank Cooperative Utilities serving Hartford County and the 9 counties of the Eastern Shore have retail electric sales equal to 9% of the total sold in Maryland by all utilities. Yet the share of solar generation that same DPL Chop Tank territory supports is 30% of Maryland's current total generation, as documented in the Generation Attribute Tracking System of PJM's registered renewable generators. And this is despite having far fewer citizens and rooftops available for distributed solar, which Daymark Advisory Group in the report they delivered to the PSC stated was the most economically beneficial means of building solar in the state. When the current solar generators have been approved with a CPCN from Maryland PSC are operational, this is not included in the current amount that's here right now, but the PSC has approved CPCNs for over 400 megawatts of solar on the Eastern Shore. And when they are producing, finally on the grid and producing, the Eastern Shore will represent 19% of the total solar generation needed to meet not the current requirement for solar, which is 7.5%, but the 14.5% that is necessary by 2030. And that would assume that no other CPCNs were issued. However, there are already an additional 142 megawatts of applications for issuance of a CPCN on the Eastern Shore that have been submitted to the PSC, with Morgnec Rhodes Solar being one of them. If these projects are approved, this would bring the total contribution for the Eastern Shore for solar to 32% of the estimated 8,193,370 megawatt hours mandated in 2030. Here lies the question of equity. How much loss of rural character must be tolerated by the residents of the Eastern Shore and the installation of industrial electric generation plants covering vast swaths of the landscape surrounded by chain link fence? How much destruction of our environment? The pollution of creeks and the destruction of wetlands that occurred has been documented by the Maryland Department of the Environment during construction of Great Bay Solar 1 project, which went on unabated for 5 years in Somerset County. Algonquin Power paid their $400,000 fine to Maryland, the cost of doing business, but the damage cannot be undone. And right now, there are solar projects all over the Eastern Shore that are not complying with landscape plans, with dead trees and shrubs lining the fences. What are the number of acres that are to be consumed by corporations and hedge funds that are profiting while providing precious little in the way of benefits to residents that have produced comprehensive plans, overseen local land use ordinances, and spoke loud and clear on how and where the land should be used, including allowing for solar development within Kent County? Morgnec Rhodes Solar and Urban Grid have not addressed the concerns of the residents and the government of Kent County as prescribed, that must be given due consideration during the evidentiary hearing. Urban Grid and their legal team have only to put on a theatrical show of engagement for the benefit of the audience, the Public Service Commission. They cannot work with the community to produce something of benefit for all because they have no understanding of the principles that draw our community together or the values that are important to those that live here. You won't find Urban Grid at a high school lacrosse match or football game. They don't sponsor local youth baseball teams or donate to local causes. Urban Grid cannot really work with the community because to do so would lower the profits they generate for themselves and their investors. Urban Grid won't work with the community and the local governments because they are betting on the public utility law judge to preempt the local land use ordinances and ignore our comprehensive plan, allowing Urban Grid to take possession of this property, which is a precious jewel to those of us that live in Kent County. Thank you.
Thank you. Patricia Langenfelder.
Hello, how are you? Can you hear
Oh, good,
me?
thank you. Yes,
Thank
we can hear you fine. Can you state
My-
your name and spell it for the court reporter, please?
Sure. Patricia Langenfelder, Patricia, Langenfelder's Langenfelder. I want to thank you for allowing me to make my comments tonight. I'd like to preface my comments by saying that I am not opposed to solar projects in general. In fact, our family farm installed a freestanding 2-acre array a few years ago that produces electricity to compensate for the farm's usage and for our homes. With that said, however, I am opposed to granting a CPCN to Morgnec Solar Urban Grid because it does not comply with the Kent County Comp Plan or with the land use ordinance. Several years ago, the parcel of land that Morgnec Solar wants to use for its solar array was the subject of a charrette co-sponsored by Kent County and Chestertown and facilitated by Eastern Shore Land Conservancy. The purpose was to determine what the citizens envisioned as the best use of this land. The event lasted 3 days and was well attended by members of the community. I was on the Kent County Planning Commission at the time and attended as well. At the conclusion of 3 days of mapping, breakout sessions, design sketches, and discussions, the consensus was that the land should be utilized for mixed-use residential with some retail similar to downtown Chestertown, small parks, walking trails, and more. The design was well received by both Kent County and Chestertown. That charrette design is still valid today and can be viewed online. Zoned for residential development and with water and sewer lines servicing the opposite side of Route 291 clearly make the Clark Farm the most logical growth area in the county. To eliminate potential residential development by placing a solar array on this parcel for the next 30 years will force development to go in other areas of the county not as well suited and counter to the comp plan. The COVID pandemic, coupled with remote working, has created a big interest from residents in large urban areas to move to small rural communities such as Chestertown. To cover up the Clark Farm with solar panels for 30 years will negatively impact Chestertown's ability to take advantage of the opportunity to attract new residents. Thank you for allowing me to make my comments.
Thank you. Frank Lewis.
Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to comment. The Clark Farm on which the Urban Grid solar array is proposed is without doubt the least appropriate open land in Kent County for the building of an industrial scale solar plant. Any other open land in Kent County would be equally useful for solar generation, as the sun shines equally everywhere and most of the land here is flat. The only factors which lead Urban Grid to pursue this location, in spite of community opposition, is because it is financially more beneficial to them. This may be because of the location adjacent to an electrical substation, thus minimizing connection costs, or because the price of the land is more favorable than elsewhere, or both. Locating the project in the areas which are zoned for industrial solar would in no way decrease the efficiency of energy generation, but because it might entail longer connections to reach the grid, or because the land is more expensive, it would be less profitable. The rationale for choosing the Clark Farm over other locations is therefore only for the financial benefit of Urban Grid and has no advantage in any way for Kent County or its residents. On the contrary, siting the project on the Clark Farm has multiple severe disadvantages for Kent County and for Chestertown, chief among them precluding the expansion of Chestertown in this direction for the next 34 years and placing an environmental eyesore on one of the principal gateways into Chestertown. The potential expansion of Chestertown and the development of innovative urban and recreational facilities is feasible only in this location because expansion in other directions is precluded by land preservation, poor access, location on roads which are not gateways into Chestertown, or limited available acreage. In addition, the adequate exploration of the historical significance of the Clark Farm and its possible significance to the Underground Railroad in the 1850s has not yet been possible and would not be if this project were built. Both Chestertown and Kent County, via legitimate governmental processes, have carefully evaluated the pros and cons of this project, in the case of Kent County for nearly a year, and have both rejected it as an inappropriate use of the property. The county exercised its legitimate power to control zoning for the greater good of the county and its residents, and in the interest of the most intelligent growth for the future. Because this land is obviously so valuable for Chestertown and Kent County, a decision to populate it with solar panels by either the administrative law judge or the full PUC would effectively eviscerate the ability of the county to control zoning for the future and would establish a legal precedent which would open all land in the county to any solar project which chooses to be sited anywhere in the county for the foreseeable future. There are dozens of such projects and companies in the wings which are closely watching this proceeding, and if it is favorable to Urban Grid, the next few years will see the most complete gutting of this beautiful landscape that we can envision. The benefits of doing so will accrue solely to the bottom line of these solar companies, which already realize lavish profits from the extravagant subsidies placed on solar generation by both the U.S. government and by the state, and will have no benefits whatsoever to the residents of the county or the local environment. This court has a responsibility to thoughtfully evaluate the merits of this project and assess the need for such a project to meet the goals for renewable energy generation in Maryland. Those goals can be met equally by siting the project on lands which are appropriate for that purpose and can realize just as much energy generation with equal efficiency as on the Clark Farm. The only beneficiary of approving the project in this location is to the profits of a private company and to the simultaneous detriment of Kent County and its residents. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. I see that Frank Rhodes has been able to join the meeting.
Frank Lewis just made the comments.
Yes, no, I know. Frank Rhodes was the first person on my list who wasn't in the meeting to begin with, but who I see now. Mr. Rhodes, are you able to unmute yourself?
Can you hear me now?
Now, yes.
Oh, great.
Good evening.
My technological advances are growing every day.
Good.
Thank you.
If you could first start with stating your name and spelling it for the court reporter, which I might have forgotten to have Mr. Lewis do. Mr. Court Reporter, do you have Mr. Lewis's name spelling?
Everything is fine, Your Honor.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, Mr. Rhodes, if you could say and spell your name for the court reporter, please.
My name is Frank Rhodes, Frank Rhodes.
Thank you. You can go ahead with your comments, please.
Okay, I have a business right across from where the solar panels are supposed to go in. And one comment I have is there are other areas in Kent County to put these solar panels. I understand there's some places in Massey, and I just think this is a gateway to Chestertown. Chestertown is one of the most historic towns on the Eastern Shore, and it would just be a shame to put something like this up there that I think would take away from the beauty of this area. I have a question for the solar company. Are the panels made in the USA?
At the end, after everyone's provided comments, if the applicant and Mr. Bauer wish to answer questions, they'll stay on the line and do so. But at this point in the hearing, we're just taking comments.
Okay.
So if you can hold that question till the end.
Sure. I also want to know, will the solar company, whatever the name of it is, will they be sold? Are they going to stay as they are for a very long time? Because I'm really concerned that a lot of these companies get sold to foreign companies over in Asia or India or whatever, and we can't even get a hold of them. They'll be out of sight, out of mind. They just come, they build their site, and then they go. So I'd like to know who's going to own solar and will they ever be sold? The next question is, how much money do they have set aside in a bond in 25 years to take all these big chunks of cement and all this stuff out of the ground if they have to? Will there be enough money there to do that? That's one of my main concerns. And what are they going to do along the side of the highway? They're going to plant lots of trees, or they're going to put like barbed wire fence? You know, what are they going to do in the event that they get this approved? Again, I just feel that Chestertown is a wonderful community, and I think these could go somewhere else. Now, I live right across the street. I'm not a NIMBY, not in my backyard person, and I'm 100% for solar. But I feel like this is just a bad idea for Chestertown. It's going to ruin the landscape. People are going to come to town. I know they're going to see there's businesses on the left, and then they're going to see a bunch of solar panels on the right, and then they drive into historic Chestertown, Washington College, and all that. And I just don't think it's a good fit for our town. I think there are more options in Kent County, and I think this could go somewhere else. I understand that it might cost the solar company a little bit of extra money to move to Massey, you know, to go to a new power source, but this is just not a good idea, in my opinion, for Kent County. Again, I'm 100% for solar, but I feel that we have too much going here. We have too much pride in this county. So I'd like to see it somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you. Was Judy Gifford able to join the hearing?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes, my name is Judy Gifford, Gifford. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. We have all seen this movie before. Big energy corporations get big subsidies to do as they wish, overriding and at times destroying local communities in the name of progress and national priorities. Here we are in 2021 when renewable corporations are getting huge subsidies to develop wherever they wish, with little concern for the impact on communities and land use policies in the future. This project is a prime example of corporations running over communities. Morgnec Solar did not meet with local officials as they had no intention of modifying their plans to align with the property and community vision. My community, Kent County, has clear, well thought out priorities for land use. This beautiful property is at risk, and it is sadly has not been preserved. However, the next best use proposed for this is expansion for Chestertown, which then protects other farmland from development. A several hundred acre solar development is not an allowable nor is it an acceptable use and should not be given a CPCN. Citizens who raise objections are often considered short-sighted climate deniers, but this is not true. As my neighbor Pat Langenfelder has done, I have also installed solar panels on 2 structures on my farm, although I too worry about the problem of disposal, as Mr. Rhodes has mentioned. I support development where it fits into the county vision. It is short-sighted to develop this beautiful land to save the planet. It is just another example of short-term gain for the developers in exchange for long-term liabilities for the local communities. Thank you.
Thank you. John Arison?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. My name is John Arison, Jon Arason. I'm a certified urban planner with a master's degree and over 40 years of experience, and I want to tell you why this project shouldn't proceed. First, project approval will erode public trust. Second, it isn't consistent with the city or county comprehensive plans. And third, the impact statement is deficient. Over the course of my career, I've seen how the public wants greater input into the planning, the future of their communities. In response, public planners have gone to great lengths to engage people in the planning process. This involves intensive outreach to which people devote a great deal of their time and energy. The end result is an adopted, consensus-based long-range plan having considerable public buy-in, and the public expects that decisions and policies made by their officials will reflect these plans. Second, state law and legal precedent urges that land use decisions be consistent with adopted plans. Working with their citizens, Kent County and Chestertown both have developed and adopted comprehensive plans to guide the growth and development of their communities. One of the guiding principles of the Kent County Plan is to encourage growth in and around existing towns and villages to preserve the county's rural character and agricultural lands. The Chestertown Plan states that it is through land use planning that the town intends to establish the pattern, type, and pace of growth. The city and county targeted the Morgnec site as important to accommodate the projected future growth of Chestertown. The town plan explicitly states that if and when annexation occurs, the northeast planning area, the Morgnec site, is the most likely place where it was happen. You've heard that the Eastern Shore Land Conservancy, working with the town and the public, undertook a major master planning effort for the Morgnec site. This plan, the Chestertown Greenbelt Master Plan, is adopted into the town's comprehensive plan for implementation as future development occurs. The city and county negotiated a municipal growth area boundary for Chestertown, and this area includes the Morgnec site. A municipal growth element determines how the town will grow and how public services, infrastructure, and preservation will be accommodated, and how state infrastructure funds will be spent in the future. These plans were reviewed and accepted by the Maryland Department of Planning to assist the state in ensuring rational statewide growth. So now the Morgnec project has come along. It is obvious that this project is in no way consistent with the comprehensive plans of either jurisdiction. Third, in their impact analysis, Morgnec did not assess the socioeconomic impact of removing this land from the city and county's growth management strategy. Now, I understand that the Public Service Commission can preempt local laws and plans in its decision-making, but you have to consider all the time and effort the public has put into their plans and their reliance on the integrity of the decision-making process to see these plans through. Approving a project that blatantly runs afoul of the comprehensive plans of two jurisdictions will only add to public cynicism and apathy towards government. Why should the community give their time, effort, and knowledge to craft a better future if a single entity can just overrule it? As your mother said, at least as my mother used to say, just because you can doesn't mean that you should. Thank you.
Thank you. Jerry Dockstetter? He was here. I'm not sure what happened to Mr. Dockstetter. Well, hopefully he'll be able to rejoin. Tom, is it hers?
It is, Your Honor. Thank you very much. Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Thomas Hers, and I represent Ward 2 on Chestertown's Town Council. I was proud to join a unanimous council in passing a resolution opposing this project at our most recent council meeting on Monday night. Your Honor, I see that our mayor is on the call as well as another council member. Our mayor is giving testimony at the next hearing on this matter. I, for the most part, will let his testimony and the recently passed resolution serve as my public remarks, except to add the following. First, I align with other commenters in not being generally opposed to solar projects in our area. But a project of this size and in this location is the wrong kind of development for our area. It constricts Chestertown's growth by developing a solar field on land representing one of the few areas where Chestertown can annex and grow. It diminishes the beauty and underlying rural character of Chestertown. and it offers very little or no long-term economic benefit to the residents of Chestertown. Thank you, Your Honor, for the opportunity to speak tonight on this important matter.
Thank you.
And I believe I forgot to spell my name. I'm sorry. It's Herz.
Thank you. Elizabeth Watson?
Good evening, Your Honor. Can you hear me well?
Yes, thank you.
I'm on a new computer. Thank you. My name is Elizabeth Watson, Elizabeth Watson. And thank you for the opportunity to comment. I'm a resident of historic Chestertown. The state of Maryland's General Assembly has delegated an enormous responsibility to the Public Service Commission to enable our state to achieve ambitious goals from conversion from fossil fuel-powered energy generation. And I understand the urgency that we must do everything possible to avoid adding more greenhouse gases to the atmosphere. The so-called nuisance but substantial coastal flooding we experienced on the Eastern Shore last week is only our most recent reminder of the costs we Marylanders will all experience if we do not do our part to support the development of clean energy. However, the General Assembly has also made it clear that not all land in Maryland should be considered suited for the Public Services Commission to exercise its power to override local planning upon a developer's application for a certificate of public convenience and necessity. In fact, I believe that the site under your consideration tonight exemplifies this principle. Locals call this site the Clark Farm, so that is what I will call it. The General Assembly long ago, and even as recently as the last several legislative sessions, has told the Public Service Commission to give due consideration to 11 other competing imperatives. I won't list them all. I'm primarily concerned tonight with 4: the effect of the proposed project on aesthetics, the effect of the proposed project on historic sites, the recommendation of the local governing body on the proposed project, and the consistency of the project with the local government's comprehensive plan and zoning. I believe that a utility-scale energy facility on the edge of Chestertown would have major adverse impacts on a cultural landscape that is a critical gateway to Chestertown. Just on its own, the Clark Farm is both a historic site and an aesthetically significant scenic site. Despite some pretty diligent searching, I could not find rules that the Public Service PSC has promulgated for those 11 competing imperatives. And I'd love to see them if somebody can get them to me. So the Clark Farm is both a historic site and aesthetically significant scenic site. It may be eligible for listing in the National Park Service's Underground Railroad Network to Freedom, based on a highly significant story of 11 people who fled from their enslavement involving that location. Its archaeological potential is high, despite the applicants and the Maryland Historical Trust claims otherwise, as a remnant plantation landscape from the 17th century, an understudied part of Kent County's and Maryland's early history. The dramatic hillside it contains is an important topographic or geologic feature that dominates the scenic view. If you haven't seen it, Your Honor, I hope you will. Moreover, the importance of this site should be considered with its context. First, as others have mentioned, is an entrance to Chestertown, which is a National Historic Landmark historic district, one of only about 70 such districts recognized across the United States. Second, it is part of the Stories of the Chesapeake Heritage Area, a Maryland recognized program to promote the public appreciation of historic sites. A scenic and cultural landscape assessment for the Stories Management Plan gave the landscape district that includes the Clark Farm one of the highest rankings among 25 districts in 4 counties. Third, it borders Morgan Creek, which is part of the National Park Service's Captain John Smith Chesapeake National Historic Trail, which interprets significant landscapes around the bay, of which Morgan Creek is one. Fourth and finally, the Clark Farm was a major element in a rural historic district surrounding and including Chestertown that was identified and proposed by an expert employed by the state of Maryland when the State Emergency Services Tower was built across the road. Perfunctory review by the Maryland Historical Trust that declared it ineligible was inadequate. In fact, I believe this is an overwhelmingly significant historic site based on the multiplicity of these factors. Development of Morgnec solar would also place a significant obstacle to the planned growth of Chestertown and Kent County. Both of our local governing bodies oppose the proposed project, and it is furthermore inconsistent with our local comprehensive plan and zoning. I know others are speaking to this, so I'll be brief. If we cannot grow Chestertown properly, Sprawl beyond Chestertown will threaten the farmland this county has worked so hard to protect for decades, under state guidance and encouragement, I might add. If we cannot grow Chestertown properly, we also threaten the sustainability of our community, which needs to grow to support our schools and businesses in the new economic world in which we now found ourselves. Development of Morgnec Solar would blight a part of Chestertown's edge that is on the move, within walking distance of a major new YMCA and a major and growing employer. In fact, based on all of these factors, if the Clark Farm cannot be presumed to remain under local government planning, I can't think of any land across the state that would be protected from the random preferences of solar developers that care nothing for the overall benefit of the host community they have targeted. Thank you, Your Honor, for this opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Don't see that Mr. Dockstetter was able to rejoin. Paula Reeder?
You hear me, Your Honor?
Yes.
Very much for giving me the opportunity to speak this evening. My name is Paula Reeder, spelled Paula Reeder. I'm here tonight to share some important information with you that contradicts the information you've heard from the project opponents, and that I believe is very important to this discussion. It's fitting today that today has been declared Energy Day by the International Climate Conference in Glasgow, where 21 nations, including the United States, have pledged to end financing for fossil fuel projects. I'm here tonight to request the Public Service Commission to issue the requested certificate of public convenience and necessity to the Morgnec Rhodes solar project, to allow it to be completed, because I believe, and my research indicates, that this project will be to the benefit of both county residents, county businesses, the county, and the state in both the near and the long term. And the reasons for approving this project are many, and they're pretty profound. First, we owe it as a local municipality to future generations to support the transition from fossil fuel powered energy to renewable energy. Every municipality needs to participate in affirmatively to address climate change by transitioning to renewable energy generation capability from existing fossil fuel powered energy that pollutes and only expands our carbon footprint. We need to do this also to address the escalating cost of fossil fuel fired energy that impacts every single resident of this county and every single business. And we need to do it on a utility scale, because frankly, what's proposed by the opponents as individual initiatives is unaffordable and impractical for most people who live in Kent County. We also need, as a member of this state, to support the state's goal of realizing a renewable portfolio target of 50% renewable energy by 2030. While we have managed successfully to quadruple our solar energy capability since 2015, we still have a long way to go, as you well know, to achieve that 50% target. Opponents of this proposal, who actually are a minority, most of whom are on the same board of directors who have spoken tonight of an organization that is committed to preventing the development of land for any use other than farmland, they're led by a small group of well-heeled, large landholders who are dead set against using the land for any other purpose. And you should take that into mind in considering their arguments. The title of their last public article on the subject is not only the most jaw-dropping oxymoron since Yogi Berra, it epitomizes how they feel about utility-scale solar installations to a T. They said, put solar where it belongs, not on open space. Now think about that. Do you get the picture? The fact is that project opponents don't want utility scale solar anywhere in Kent County, and they have managed to craft local zoning ordinances to achieve that purpose. In the process, they have effectively denied access to utility scale solar power and the benefits that it pertains to other Kent County residents and local businesses, irrespective of the public, economic, and environmental benefits associated with utility scale solar power. The fact of the matter is that the land that's proposed to be used for this project is the highest and best use of that land. Over 91% of the land in Kent County is dedicated to agricultural pursuits. That leaves 9% for everything else. And as a consequence, in the 30 years that I've lived here, this county has gone downhill in terms of population, in terms of the high school population, from 1,200 5 years ago to 500 today, from losing over 1,500 residents in the last 10 years. Closing of various businesses. And why is that? It's because we have not supported the generation of business and the generation of tax revenues adequate to support the services that this community needs and requires to survive into the future. There are many areas of ground, contrary to what's been stated by the opponents, there are many areas of ground surrounding Chestertown. In fact, many that have been for sale for years, unsuccessfully, that would support residential development. The fact of the matter is the town has no plan on the drawing board for future residential development. And if you listen to the arguments otherwise, you will not be hearing the truth. The land that's slated for this project was formerly zoned industrial and commercial. It's bordered on the other side of the road by intensive industrial and commercial facilities. The land, the Clark Farm, is not the most suitable place to locate additional residential development in the future. There are plenty of other areas in the county that are more attractive and would be more attractive to residential homeowners than Morgnec Road. The fact of the matter is that Kent County zoning doesn't permit industrial scale solar power in any place in the county, no place else. So if we're going to have utility scale solar power, what we need to do is locate it in a place that is already occupied by industrial and commercial facilities that already has a suitably sized electric substation, power station, to accept the power that will be generated by this project and go forward. The other thing that should be noted in your considerations is that the developer of this project has agreed to every single criteria that was stipulated by the county commissioners before they withdrew their approval for this project. Furthermore, none of the people who are currently involved in the town council, nor the mayor, have ever participated in any of the public information sessions sponsored by the developer. So their arguments are not only specious, they're unsupportable. Speaking for the residents of Kent County who would like to see some way to mitigate the cost of energy going forward, who would like to see pollution mitigated, who would like to see solar supplant fossil fuel power, I humbly request that the Public Service Commission approve the requested certificate. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you. Doug West.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I'm late getting on.
Oh, that's no problem. Can you state and spell your name for the court reporter, please?
Yes, Doug West, D-O-U-G-W-E-S-T.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
I would just like to mention that the county commissioners and government and the town of Chestertown and quite a lot of residents are not against solar energy at all. We're against the position of the solar energy of this scale in this location. And it's simply not true that there are a lot of other places around Chestertown for future development. Chestertown is very limited on their areas to grow, and with real estate going through the roof right now and there being so few houses available on the market, new builds are going to be increasingly attractive to people. So taking this huge farm out of the growth area for Chestertown would be a huge blow to not only to the town, but to the county. And when there are places that are zoned for solar at this scale, that are up by 301 that the county has already zoned, that needs to be explored first before we come to an area like this. So I know a lot of this has already been said before, but I just want to stress, you just heard some kind of crazy statements that didn't quite add up. And so I just wanted to give you my 2 cents, and I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. John Leisinger.
Thank you, Your Honor. My name is John Leisinger. I have just returned from having my computer fixed. Pause in the microphone. If I'm breaking up, please tell me and I'll call back on another device. Can you hear me so far, at least? Hello? Can you hear me?
I'm sorry. We can hear you.
Thank you.
You broke up a little toward the end, but we'll let you know if it's a problem. But can you start by saying and stating your name?
Just speak slowly. That would be good and helpful, and thank you.
I can do that. John Leisinger.
I've already lost you. You're gonna have to speak directly into the microphone of the computer.
Came back from having my computer repaired for the microphone. Hasn't been repaired. We're going to find out. Please raise your hand if you can't hear me.
We can hear you now.
Thank you. The global
But not
crisis
now.
is real, and it has been hundreds of years.
Your Honor, he's cutting off and on. I'm afraid
Yeah.
I can't
Right.
get it.
Your Honor, may I call back on a different device and get back in the queue when I've done that?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Is Michael Wooten on the hearing? Reverend Tolliver? You're still muted, Reverend Tolliver. We can't hear you.
Need to unmute.
Your Honor, I'm not hearing anything.
No. I know you said that you wanted to submit written comments. I didn't know if you also wanted to speak this evening. No. Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Mr. Leisinger, are you back with us? How about Hugh Gibson? Mr. Leisinger, I see you now, but you are muted. Actually, no, we just can't hear you.
Can Mr. Leisinger simply call in by telephone?
That is an option. While we're waiting to connect with Mr. Leisinger, is there someone who has joined the call who I perhaps don't have their name but would like to speak at this time?
Well, I have been here all along, but I thought that my name was already on the list. I'm David Foster, Mayor of Chestertown.
You're not on the list I have to speak this evening. I know that you will be speaking at the evidentiary hearing next week, but if you'd like to speak this evening, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Good.
I muted Mr. Leisinger.
Okay, that's fine. I'm David Foster, Mayor of Chestertown, and that's DAVID FOSTER. And I'm a civil engineer, urban planner, and currently the mayor of Chestertown. And I've also lived in this historic town for about 24 years. And just last Monday, at the mayor and council meeting on November 1st, the council voted unanimously to compose a resolution of opposition of the industrial scale solar farm currently proposed on Morgnec Road. And I'd like to read that resolution. The Morgnec Solar LLC proposal of a 45 megawatt solar generating station will cover the first undeveloped land east of the municipal boundaries of our town. The town's comprehensive plan specifically identifies this site as a major part of the Northeast Planning Area. It is currently zoned by Kent County to continue the rural uses until annexation. Development in every other direction around Chestertown is constrained by the Chester River to the south and environmental and agricultural easements on adjacent farms to the north and west of Chestertown. In contrast, the Morgnec solar site in question, the Morgnec solar site, not sure why I'm picking up an echo now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, hang on just a second. Mr. Leisinger, you are now on the call twice. Can you disconnect one of the instances, please? Okay, Mr. Foster, I apologize if you could
No problem.
go ahead.
In contrast, the Morgnec solar site in question abuts existing out-of-town water and sewer and is served by an existing state roads network and offers a walkable location for future development. A portion of this site is within the state mandated priority funding area designed to encourage compact growth close to Chestertown. This is an excellent site for future mixed-use development that would serve the needs of our town. The mayor and council strongly oppose the proposed issuance of a certificate of public convenience and necessity and Maryland's override of our carefully constructed local planning and zoning. The town council would also like to state for the record that it is not opposed to industrial solar or other renewable energy projects in appropriate locations in Kent County. I know that some would have liked to characterize our debate this evening as being one of pro and con with regard to solar installations. That simply is not true. Most of your presenters, all of our town council, firmly supports solar power, including solar power in Kent County. What we oppose is a misplaced industrial scale solar field immediately adjacent to our town, immediately blocking the most appropriate area for our town to expand. Thank you very much for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Leisinger, you have you're on the hearing twice.
Thank you. Yes. Can you hear me this time? I apologize for the.
No, that's okay. I just didn't know if being on here twice was going to cause an echo, but it doesn't seem to be so far. So go ahead if you could say and spell your name for the court reporter.
My name is John Leisinger, Lysinger.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The global climate crisis is real. It has been hundreds of years in the making, and it will certainly require at least decades to cure. The cure must enlist multiple strategies, including energy conservation, technical improvements in efficiency, and increased reliance on nuclear energy, new technologies such as hydrogen conversion, green energy production, such as solar power, and let's not forget carbon recapture and sequestration, in which farmland preservation will serve critical roles. It would be a serious mistake to place all of your bets on any single strategy. It would be especially a mistake to seize on any specific proposal, regardless of its flaws, simply because it happens to be the first in line and ready at hand. There can be no question that solar energy must and will play a role in Kent County's future. The climate crisis is pressing, and everyone will need to make sacrifices to address it. As a member of Kent Conservation and Preservation, I can testify that the Alliance supports construction of solar projects in the county. That said, Developers of utility-scale solar projects should not be granted a free and unconstrained hand to do whatever they wish in the drive to maximize profits. Urban Grid's proposal is ready at hand, but it has serious flaws. Its approval will have profound long-term implications for Kent County and the town of Chestertown, and it would be a mistake to accept it. The long-term costs and trade-offs are likely to be higher than the applicant will admit to. With regard to the proposed project, please show me where it is written that a company such as Urban Grid should be able to do whatever it deems necessary to maximize profits, despite laws and regulations in place to protect its neighbors. Where is it written that companies such as Urban Grid that develop projects made feasible only by federal and state subsidies can thumb their noses at land and use regulations that apply to virtually everyone else, especially when other land has already been set aside in the county's land use ordinance as available for large-scale solar projects? Where is it written that we must accept at face value Urban Grid's word that the project relocation to an appropriately zoned site would cause it to become financially infeasible, when there are ample examples of successful solar projects that do not happen to be located immediately adjacent to electric power lines and substations? Where is it written that the PSC must approve an applicant's projects regardless of scale simply because the applicant claims that it is their model that prefers mega scale efficiencies, especially when other smaller projects have been approved without significant opposition from the public or local governments? Who is to say that the applicant's wishes for bigger profits should be the determining factor? Where is it written that the PSA should encourage developers to skirt landscaping requirements that have been established for similar projects, as is clearly Urban Grid's intent? How can we be certain that once Kent County zoning rules have been broken, other developers, citing precedent, will not declare open season on our flat and open prime farmland? Successful farming relies on a complex ecosystem of related enterprises that will become increasingly fragile with the loss of every additional farm to solar companies. It is easily foreseeable that such a land rush could result in dramatic change to our landscape and the collapse of the farming community. The extraordinary prices paid for farmland by solar companies in and of itself makes farming less sustainable. It is for that reason that solar projects should be located on unproductive farmland and brownfields. I would submit that federal and state subsidies are more than sufficient to incentivize smaller scale solar projects on parcels already zoned appropriately. There's plenty of evidence that residents and companies will invest their dollars in solar energy for local use on their rooftops, their already developed lots, and brownfields. There is simply no reason to consume prime farmland for the purpose. Farmland will be critical to raising foods to feed a growing global population. And then there is several site-specific objections to Urban Grid's proposal, each of which deserving more than a simple mention, and I expect others to testify to or have testified to. Perhaps the most important is a long-accepted plan for Chestertown's residential expansion, which has few alternatives due to preservation easements. In addition, the property is the only feasible location for the long-discussed Chestertown bypass. And most recently, it has been revealed that the Clark Farm, on which Urban Grid would build, holds historical significance, both as a site of one of Maryland's earliest farmsteads and for its role in the pre-Civil Wars Underground Railroad. I am sure that you will hear testimony concerning the superficiality of Urban Grid's architectural and historical document investigations in that regard. Without a more thorough investigation that takes full advantage of, for example, ground penetrating radar, we might never know how much of our heritage will be lost to Urban Grid's profit ambitions. In conclusion, there is always more than one way to solve any problem, even one as serious as the climate crisis. It is important that we consider all of the long-term pluses and minuses of every proposed solution, and that those proposals that present the most obvious negatives be sent back to the drawing board with specific instruction to solve those negatives. We can be confident that Kent County will see many, many more green energy proposals, and we should do all that we can to ensure that every one of them better balances the cost and benefits than has Urban Grid, which has made virtually no attempt to discuss or negotiate with interveners, the town of Chestertown or Kent Preservation. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Has anyone joined the meeting that would like to be heard, who hasn't had a chance to speak yet? Mr. Bugemans, I don't know if you made note of a couple of the questions that Frank Rhodes had, and I don't believe he's with us any longer. So I don't know if you want to address any of those at this time. I'm just going to give you the option.
Okay. I did take note of Mr. Rhodes' questions, and I think we could briefly address them, Your Honor. So the first question is, will the solar company be sold? I think the answer to that is it's possible. It's something that does happen with these projects. It is part of Urban Grid's business model. The second question, will the panels be made in the United States of America? My understanding is that that decision has not been made in terms of where the panels will be sourced. So it's something that will be determined at a later date when the design is finalized. The third question was effectively, does a bond need to be put in place to cover the removal of the project? And the answer is yes. On that point, the state has a standard condition that requires the project prior to construction to receive approval of a decommissioning plan. And as part of that plan, the project has to include a cost estimate, which estimates the cost of removal during a 5-year period. And then the approved cost needs to be bonded and the bond submitted to the Public Service Commission. That plan is updated in 5-year increments. So as prices change and inflation occurs, things of that nature, the bond will be adjusted through the life of the project. So there is a mechanism in place to do that. And then the final question was, what is the project going to do along the highway? Mr. Bauer mentioned the settlement agreement entered into between the project and the state of Maryland. That settlement requires the project to comply with the county's new solar siting ordinance, CHR 7-2020. And as part of that ordinance, there are some very specific setback and screening requirements. Most specifically along the highway, I'm assuming that's Morgnec Road, the project will be required to implement a 200-foot buffer and also receive approval from the county of a 60-foot vegetative screen. Again, the specifics are in the ordinance, so Mr. Rhodes or the public can review that. But there is a robust requirement for screening along the road. So hopefully that's responsive, and he's not here now, but maybe he'll see that on YouTube. So.
Okay, just going to give a last shout out. I don't think any of these people were able to join the meeting, but Jerry Dockstetter, he was here for a while. I don't see him any longer. Michael Wooten or Hugh Gibson. And just want to make sure there's no one else who hasn't had an opportunity to speak who'd like to speak this evening. Please let me know now. Okay, well, I want to thank everyone for participating in this evening's hearing. I am going to share my screen at the end with the address that written comments should be mailed to. If anyone has trouble with the electronic filing of their comments through the commission website, the comments can always be mailed first class mail. And I will share my screen with that. And then after a few minutes, I'll come back on and the meeting will be adjourned. Thank you again to everyone. Okay, I hope everyone was able to get that. If not, you can go back and view on YouTube and get that address if you need it. Thank you again to everyone. It is 7:58 p.m. and we are adjourned. We can go off the record, Mr. Carter.
John, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good night.
Good night.